so.
Yeah, it's
Sending it down.
like 70, low 70.
Yeah, I know I saw you last week.
Yeah,
We did
thank
shoot
you.
the transit as well as
Okay. So we can start.
Drew, sorry.
Whenever you're ready.
No, they,
I think it's
person,
Sarah's
no
not gonna
video.
do that.
Yeah, I don't think she's coming.
The recording has started, so we can start the meeting. Ms. Scott. So I'll call to order, and then we'll do roll call and introductions. Tom Riley, I'm the chair from Pioneer Center for Human Services in McHenry.
I'm Kim Hankins from McHenry County College.
I'm Shaylin Daigle from McHenry County Council of Governments.
Virginia Kreshke, wherever you're from.
Scott Hennings, I'm the DOT here in McHenry County.
Doug Martin with the City of McHenry.
Jasmine Vega here at the DOT.
Ed?
Oh, yeah. Ed Gallagher, I'm the PACE Community Relations Representative for here in McHenry.
Terry Apple, I recently was appointed to the Regional Transportation Authority Citizen Advisory Board. And I'm an advocate for, on the board I represent the riders in the county. And I am also an advocate for better process service in the county.
Drew Duff from McHenry County Council of Mayors and with the DOT as well.
Okay. Sir?
I'm Sarah Reeser, and I am an engaged transit enthusiast. My background is in technology. I was brought on in 2015 to the CTA to coordinate CTA PACE and Metro, the Ventura app, and the Venture program, and manage create a change board for them to manage change and manage their vendor Cubic and Trampies. I then was inspired to start my own company, which is called Analytical Intel. And recently, once I was there, I had to ride every single train, bus, and rail for CTA, PACE, and Metro, the whole RTA, to ensure the quality of that app. And I got to know Chicago and those types of things in the region. Recently, in the last year, I've been put in a position where I've been using PACE, Transit, and Metro here in McHenry County. I am a user of McRide. I'm one of your MCC students. I'm one of those numbers of all your metrics. And Scott here entertained my presentation for McHenry County College. I put a presentation together of how to alleviate homelessness here in McHenry County and people in need by focusing on transit. And started documenting, I do have a background in audit, started documenting issues I was having, observations based on my background, my professional background, and had actually some items to address, and I can speak to that later, where I saw areas of improvement that were tangible and, with the right funding, could be performed. So I'm here today to listen to your board meeting.
Okay, thank you, and welcome. And then back. We're just doing introductions.
Okay, my name is Bianca and I'm here with the RTA.
Thank you. And you'll speak later. Yasmin informed me, remember last time we weren't officially members, we're the Renegade Caucus, I guess, but we have been voted back on approved, so we can do the August 3rd minutes that we were going to approve last time, but we weren't able to. So, motion to approve the August 3rd board meeting minutes.
So move.
Second.
And a second. Anyone against, I guess? So all in favor, so that passes. And I think that's all we have to approve, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then, do you have the public comment?
Yeah, that's what I did.
Thank you. Public comment, we've got Terry and then Sarah. I'm not sure if you want to expand on your comments or.
I was going to share my observations, a summary of.
If you could, the mic picks you up better the
Okay.
closer you are. You're welcome to come to the podium or to the table if you'd like.
Oh, the table?
It's up to you, yeah. Please, we're an informal group here, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the microphone's right there, so just.
Well, again, thank you for the invitation, and, yeah, I was put in a place where I'm going back to school. I received a grant. I'm going back to school and doing paralegal studies at the school. I should have also announced through my business, I've also been a contractor of PACE. In 2017, my company was brought on to implement software called ServiceNow. So I also know about contracting. I have my technology background is in acquisitions and mergers, merging two companies, the systems and software, the people and the processes. And my observations, the first thing I observed, and it was really, and I told Scott this, that it's really improved since the fall, but it was the time when First Transit was acquired by Transdev, and they were going through the merger. And some of the observations were the employees, the bus drivers, didn't know what's going on. They said they just showed up one day, and then they had new branding. They didn't know much. But issues with that were, there are some things that are public information in regards to contracts. And so looking at, I don't know what I was looking on that was through to the public data, but based on that contract between PACE and First Transit, I saw performance indicators that were not being met. And from a writer's standpoint, it looked, and I'm not saying, but it appeared that there was a lack of accountability, holding the vendor accountable, maybe not knowing what, 'cause I don't even know what they communicated to PACE or that type of thing when they did their contract. And I only know from my background with dealing with Cubic, another transit vendor. And that I saw that like an audit of the contract, something I know in my background of acquisitions and mergers, is that pretty much most of the time, the contract is not adhered to, or you need to renegotiate it, or you need to revisit, or you need to bring the new vendor up to speed that, hey, that type of thing, or you see them in court, or you cancel it. So that was one observation, was a call to audit this vendor. The second one was in regards to the route buses, that having the route buses, and we all know this, you only have 3 in the morning and 3 at night. And at night, you're done by 5, pretty much. You're done by 5, or you're told to use McBride. And that would call for more availability for route buses. Especially, I'm one that utilizes the McHenry County College program, and I take night classes. So that was another issue that came up with at least me as a student, was that I didn't have a ride home at night because PACE was not running. But something has changed with McBride, is that you go to 11 o'clock now. And then you are talking to McHenry County College about doing like subscription services, and there's talks in the place of improving that for students and availability. My talks at school, my presentations at school and to the student body and faculty were all about transit, and one was how to use it in McHenry County. I'm not saying it's going to be effective for you, but how do you get around in McHenry County, and showing that map that you've made of where the routes are. And people want to use it. That's the general, they want to use it. Now, my persuasive speech was how to alleviate homelessness in McHenry County. And so you have 7 organizations. 2 of them are emergency shelters, the PAD shelter and Turning Point. The PAD shelter is on the route. But my issue was that they didn't stop. Like, I had to call. You have to call them and get them to stop for you, the route buses, or they just avoid it. The second thing that I learned was that Turning Point is not on a route. And then you have these other shelters, such as Home of the Sparrow. You have New Directions, people in temporary living situations, and you have the veterans in Hebron. And so one of the suggestions was, could it be a nonprofit, another grant, to have some sort of route bus that goes frequently to those and hits those points. So that was another observation. Yes, so the main thing was the vendor seeing for opportunities for funding with the Department of Transportation, especially with the infrastructure. I know it's like a $50 billion infrastructure bill, and I know you can coordinate with Health and Human Services in regards to their grants, just based on my professional background. And I just appreciate the platform to share my experience and where I see, we could really improve. In regards to the homeless, people who are housing insecure, they are required to get jobs when they're in these shelters. And the thing is a lot of them don't drive. They can't afford a car, or they don't have their license anymore, those types of things. And when they get jobs, they get it close to the shelter. And when their time is done in the shelter, they have to quit their jobs, and they have to go back through the system. And so we're recycling. So I really saw like a actual hotspot of providing a need that could alleviate other issues in the county. I've been told, I've met with the RTA about this, wherever she is. I have talked to people at the RTA about this. And feedback I've gotten is McHenry has a lot of things right with it that have repeatable things, like ending homelessness, sustainability, providing a sustainable community, and those things. And I really see that it can be repeated through the United States. That's what we have in this county. We do a lot of things right. And feedback I got was like, oh, I hear they got it right in McHenry County. They got it right. It's like, well, if you could improve it, how much more effective would that be, throughout the country, especially in rural areas? So thank you for the platform. Yeah, thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. And we did have a presentation that Independence Health and Therapy, you're speaking of nonprofit, perhaps running and they're doing the bus route. It's for the clients in the drug court, but they offered they're trying to get additional riders. So, and I forget her name, but
yeah, and I think they're actually that program Tom spoke about is open to anybody. It's not just for specialty court users. Anybody can get on and off, and it's funded by us at DOT, but operated by the Independence Health.
Well, and I've spoken to the mental health board about this, and where I've seen is, because they host community resource days, they're the people that organize
Right.
that, is you have all these services, these great services, well-funded services who want to help. But when it comes to transit, when the issue is transit with their client, they're like, oh, here's the McRide. That's their answer. You know what I mean? And then that person is so discouraged with when it doesn't work for them. And the other thing is, because I have a background in technology, I'm encouraged about like the new PACE app transit. I also see opportunity with scheduling, automating that to where users can use an app. Could be an RFP. And the other thing is when you call, I know this is the vendor and stuff like that, when you call, I've been on hold for like 7 minutes before I even talk to someone. I get to hear that music. It's just very discouraging, especially when you don't know. You have to know exactly where you're going and where you're going from and to, exactly what time. And, a user could maybe have gotten a ride if they knew, oh, well, if I pick this time frame instead of this time frame that day, it would have worked for me. I also know from my background, Trapeze, and dealing with Trapeze. And Trapeze is the software that they use for scheduling, that the vendor uses. And my observation, just based on the services I was receiving and those types of things, is that the app may not be optimized to how it, training, there is turnover. I mean, that's what I picked up on the line in the field, is that there is a lot of turnover at TransDev with call agents and drivers. There were times the buses, not all the buses were able to run because they didn't have the drivers, they didn't have the staff. Were being utilized, and this is where I thought, a call to audit your vendor, do some vendor management there. And the other thing I do know, and it's historical, so that means it was years back, is that even the Chicago Transit Authority had problems with trapeze, and they would partner with PACE and trying to, figure out issues and resolution and stuff with the vendor. Those are just the hot points, and I know I keep talking, just full of a lot of information.
Can I respond?
Sure.
Yes.
Well, Sarah, thanks.
Yes,
Sarah and I
yeah.
have met, and I'm really glad you're here today. Thank you. When Sarah and I met, obviously I'm very focused on what the college's issues are. And since then, we've met with a couple of other people in student services, and Sam and I have spent some time together. But we're creating what we're calling a transportation card, but that's not what it's going to be called. Basically, it's a business card size-ish. It has the right words to say when you get that person online.
Yes.
Because that's what we kept hearing over and over was, well, I called and they said it wasn't available. I said, but did you say I need to be at school by 8:15, or did you say I need that? And so the language makes such a big difference. It's something you and I talked a lot about. And so we're hoping to pass those out at orientation this year and be able to start that off. And I don't know why we had such big numbers this month. Holy moly. Almost 600 riders last month. It's crazy. But anyway, clearly the program is growing. There's lots of opportunities to do stuff, but I will definitely share that with the committee when we get that. I just have to work its way through the system a little bit more. But that's something we definitely want to continue to talk about and advertising. DOT and PACE came to the campus, which I haven't actually had a chance to talk to you guys much, but I understand it was a good opportunity to talk to students and stuff. So, I think we just have to retrain people on that language thing, how to ask for what exactly you need, and then you might get something close,
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, but thanks for coming. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And I'm not sure if the Continuum of Care for the Homeless Committee, if you,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you're
I've actually
familiar
been
with them?
invited
Okay.
to talk to them. And that's why, like, WorkCorps, they're so on board with the thing like a shuttle or a bus that goes from all the shelters, and transitional housing, and like going in and applying for a grant for a van or a bus. And Mr. Ed here shared with me that PACE does provide special buses for special needs out there, like the bus for the veterans to take them out to Lucky. Is it Lucky in North Chicago?
Yeah, North Chicago.
North Chicago for health, health care. And and just from my background in dealing with grant money and federal money, and with the project I worked on at the Ventra, I learned all about funding from the federal level to the state level to the local level. And just thank you.
you're welcome, thank you.
Are you coming to the meeting next week?
No, I didn't know that.
The-
Talk about continuing.
Oh, no. Oh, is that what you're Virginia? Nice to meet you. Yes.
It's on the community planning development, I think, that
Okay.
access it through their Zoom meetings.
Okay. Thank you.
Because Continuum was supposed to be to end homelessness in 10 years. I've been on it for 30 years.
30 years. Okay.
We're still trying to fight through.
Well, I will say there's been a lot of improvement with the PADS Center on 31. I was a volunteer. I don't know if you know Linda Hewins. She was the coordinator at Bethany Lutheran, but when it was in the churches and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So I do see a lot of improvement, and talking, her name is Gina at Pioneer Center, Gina, that we had this talk because I knew her before when it was all federated amongst the churches.
Right.
And that I saw a lot of asking for money, asking for funding and stuff for this center, but that, there were some things I questioned, and she actually really educated me on how much more we've been able to home people by making the services centralized and underneath the Pioneer Center. How much, and like even knowing some of the clients that refused to be homed are now homed. No? So, yes. Thank you, Virginia.
It's 9 o'clock.
Okay,
And
thank
you
you.
can attend virtually.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Virginia.
We'll see you there.
I got a meeting.
On Zoom. Thank you, Sarah. And then Terry, did you guys want to switch? or-
Yes, we'll
Yeah,
switch.
perfect.
And Terry, keep in mind, we got you on the agenda later too.
Yeah, that's, all right, I was going to ask you.
And Terry, take as much time as you want.
Okay.
Technically, the county tries to stick within a 3-minute public comment window.
Yeah.
We went a bit over, but that's for next time. We'll just sort of keep that in mind next time.
And by the way, my church does compassion
Oh,
for campers.
yes,
for
that's
homeless.
you.
I could probably keep up with that, but anyway. I want to talk about one thing that I brought up to the chair last week, and then offer 3 examples related to it. I've been trying to think of how to get people in decision-making roles an opportunity to experience what it's like to try to use public transportation in our county, what the challenges are for people who actually have to live their lives with that as their main means of getting around. And I suggested to the chairman that he recommend to the members, the people attending here today, that they spend one day, this whole day, using just public transportation to get around. And your response, understandably, I think, was that you didn't think it would be practical to ask people a week in advance to accommodate their schedules this way. And I think that indicates a sense of recognition that the bus service in this county is inadequate, inherently so, and that whether you intended that as your response or not, but the fact that people would have to make drastic changes in their schedules in order to make that work. Well, this week I'd like to relate 3 attempts, 1 by my mother, 2 by myself, to try to contract or arrange bus service with the MC ride. My mother called on Monday to get a ride to a doctor's appointment on Wednesday. She lives in Wonder Lake. She was going to McHenry for a doctor's appointment. She could get a ride there, but not a ride home. I was able to give her a ride home, but if I had not, she would not have been able to go to her doctor's appointment. The next day, on Tuesday, I called asking to get a ride to the county transportation department committee meeting yesterday, which is at 8:15 in the morning. I called Tuesday morning asking if I could get a ride. They said, and I told them, going to Kim's point about what language are you using? I told them I had to be there at 8:15. They said the earliest I could be picked up was 10:15. So obviously I couldn't go to that meeting. And not only me, but anyone else who wanted to come to the meeting would not have been able to be accommodated likely. Today, for this meeting, I called yesterday morning asking to get a ride for this meeting to and from. I was told for the 2 o'clock meeting, I could get picked up at 12:02 and get dropped at 12:45. Now, I don't know if the building is open to people who are not employees at 12:45, but imagine if that's January and I have to wait outside for an hour and 15 minutes, so 15-degree weather. Then I asked, can I get a ride home? And they said, we don't have any. And so they said, well, I was advised to keep my booking to get here and to call back this morning to see if something opened up. I called up this morning and I was told, yes, I could get a ride home, but it would have to be at 10 a.m. in the morning. So I'm getting here at 12:45, and I have to go back in time to get a bus home, or walk for 5 hours to get home in what's likely to be the rain. So I think we can make maps that show the coverage of the bus service for PACE, but that's not the practicality, because PACE MC Ride is limited to how many stops it can take. And you can call, it seems to me in the last year or so, maybe a little longer than that when you call for a ride, they're more likely to tell you we can't get you. It used to be you would call for a ride, and you could pretty much be certain if they tell you that you're going to be picked up at a time, you get picked up at that time, but you would have no way of knowing how long the ride would last. Many times you get to your appointment and it'd be late. If it's a doctor's appointment, then you're out of luck on getting to the doctor. Sometimes you get to your appointment. I know many people who have had this experience getting to where they wanted to go, and the bus coming back was supposed to be there before they got to where they're going. So, you know, I used to take the bus service, the route bus service back in the late 70s, early 80s. I took it to go to MCC. They had hourly buses. They stopped at more places than the route bus does now. And we have more than double this population. The bus was hourly. It started, I think, before 6 o'clock. It ended after 7 o'clock. I remember taking a bus from Wonder Lake to Elgin. It took until almost noon to get there from the first bus till noon. I could go to a doctor's appointment for a physical for a job, and I took the next bus home and got back at almost 12, but at least I could do it. I knew people who went to MCC, who had classes. You could take your class, you could go to a part-time job, you could come back from a class. It was very convenient when you had hourly route buses. You could plan your schedule. If you have with the MC Ride, they say, I don't know if it's still that way, but it used to say, like a year ago at least, that they recommended you book a week in advance. What if your car breaks down and you need a car the next day? You don't know in advance, and your schedule can change, and the MC Ride doesn't allow for that. Route bus would. So I think, and also I learned. Now, I don't know if this is the whole funding, but I've learned that $14.5 million is what McHenry County gets from the RTA tax. Is that correct stuff?
Correct.
And we're only spending $2.5 million of that, $14 million on public transportation in our county. I don't know if that counts Metro or not. Does it?
No, that's just for MC Ride. It's our portion of MC Ride.
Okay, so it seems to me we're spending like 18% of that money on public transportation when we're making a tax, telling people there's a tax for that service. And maybe this is going into the RTA advisory stuff.
Well, I was going to ask, some of the things you brought up, I'm assuming those are coming up at the advisory board?
Yeah, maybe I'll
report on that.
The rest.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, the 14.5 million, is that the taxes being paid by McHenry County into it, or what is it? I'm not understanding.
From the RTA tax.
Yeah.
Sales tax. Right?
Yeah, I want to make sure we're staying on the agenda.
Okay.
How about I address that during the
Okay.
CAB part of the agenda?
All right.
Because I want to make sure we just stay above board.
All right.
Do things by the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
When we're throwing around millions, I like to
Yeah.
get it straight. All right, thank you, Terry. We'll hear from you later. And then, all right, old business, the MC Ride program update. Yes, is that you?
Yes, that is. So included in your packet, I have the ridership totals for February, March, and April. Just the big highlights. MC Ride provided about 23,000 trips for those 3 months. 19,000 of those being 53 eligible trips, so which means that individuals with a disability or seniors used those trips, so 19,000 of those 23,000 fell into that category. Another thing just to highlight, so MCC has clearly shown a demand for MC Ride trips, with the highest being in February for 604 trips, which was the most trips provided in about the 3 years since we've been partnered. So we've seen that increase in the past 3 months, which I think is a positive thing.
College is advertising it more.
Right, and yeah.
And now we're trying to just help with the sort of making it work better, making it understandable.
Yeah, and it's good to hear. I think, I occasionally hear from MCC students, and so I think it's a good opportunity to walk them through the dialogue, but also, if they're having trouble getting on the subscription service list or anything like that, we work with them in PACE to address that. And I'm glad to hear that MCC is doing such a good job in advertising that.
It seems to be working.
And the March total, that includes a week of spring break,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So it's been steady
Yeah.
also.
It's almost double what it was last year at this time. It's crazy, isn't it?
And that's kind of the big highlights from the ridership end.
And then the service partner updates, RTA is, do we have them? Bianca?
Some updates from the RTA. The first one would be regarding Transforming Transit. So recently the RTA announced Transforming Transit, which is the agency's commitment to lead the Chicago region's transit system into the future, by recognizing that transit is the greatest tool in the fight against climate change, by achieving a zero emission system, and by encouraging more people to shift from cars to transit. Transforming Transit is a pending application to the US EPA for an implementation grant within the Climate Pollution Reduction Grants Program. The RTA and the service boards are collaborating on this regional application for $375 million in federal grant funding. These funds are for CTA, PACE, and Metra to purchase electric buses, train sets, and associated charging infrastructure. If you're looking for more information about Transforming Transit, you can check out the recent blog post by the RTA by visiting rtachicago.org/blog. Recently, at the last Transit is the Answer Coalition meeting, we had over 80 riders, agency staff, advocates, and other stakeholders that met virtually on April 10th. This was the 4th quarterly Transit is the Answer Coalition meeting, and they discussed progress on implementation of Transit is the Answer, which is the Regional Transit Strategic Plan. Attendees heard from RTA staff on development of a new tool for evaluating equity within the transit network, as well as the launch of the Access Pilot Program to make transit more affordable for low-income metro riders, and new initiatives to improve rider and operator safety, and progress in RTA's 2024 state legislative agenda. Something else that is new is regarding the rebranded RTA program materials. So this year we rebranded all of our program brochures and materials for ride-free, reduced fare, and ADA paratransit. But something that's new and might be of interest is that the application process for the reduced fare program has changed. So previously, people with disabilities, they had to provide a type of proof of disability, either like a social security letter, a VA letter, a Medicare letter, or they had to go through their doctor, and if they went through their doctor, they had to get a letter. It was a lengthy process, but we have simplified that now. So anyone who is younger than 65, they can still either provide a social security letter, a VA letter, Medicare, or present a person with a disability ID pad. Or now they can also go through their teachers. So either a teacher or a school psychologist, therapist, it no longer has to be like a licensed medical professional. So this has really opened the door. Previously, working with a lot of schools and students, that barrier was always having the student go home telling their parents they need to see the doctor. Now that the teacher on behalf of the student can complete that application for them. So that's something new. All of our new applications and brochures can be found online on the RTA website, and that concludes my updates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Questions?
Yeah.
When you say teachers can submit, is that anybody with an EDU address, or how are you defining what a teacher is? 'Cause I'm just thinking there'd be a lot of like support staff at MCC that would do that for them, if that's, just wondering how you define it.
That's a good question. I would say right now we don't have like a specific protocol. We would just trust that the person filling out the application for the student is a teacher that knows the student, but we're not like hounding them down.
Oh, great, thank you.
Thank you.
And then Ed, base update?
Yep, I did submit a written report. I'm gonna do the highlights on some of those. So first, which, bring the report up. Thank you, Desmond, for putting that up. The first is, it's not a typo. In February 2024, PACE saw an increase in our ridership of 28.9% over our 2023 numbers. And that's on our fixed route service, so we carry 1.8 million riders on the fixed route. The entire system-wide, including dial rides, fixed routes, van pools, paratransit, we were 20% over our 2023 numbers in February. March, we continued to see a good growth, not in closer to the 30%, but we were still high, 15.2% higher in March of 2023, or in 2024 versus 2023. Overall, this was, we're attributing most of this to our pretty mild winter. We had some good warm days there in February, and that really led to, the opportunity for more people to opt to take transit versus, finding other means of transportation. So, great for nice warm weather while we had it there, but we did see that giant increase. Also, this will be the first time that I'll provide the numbers, but hopefully we'll be able to provide this a lot in the future. Our Rideshare Access Program, which officially launched in March, we saw an initial ridership within the first 6 months of 9,710 trips in 6 weeks. In 6 weeks of that service, we had over 9,000 trips. So we're really happy to see how fast that has been picked up by our ADA ridership, and we know that will grow. We are expecting RAP to continue to grow. RAP, if you aren't familiar, I did hand out a brochure or a little flyer to everybody. The Rideshare Access Program is PACE's user-side subsidy program for ADA paratransit users to opt into potentially an Uber or a U-Serve rideshare trip instead of using ADA service. So individuals would qualify for the ADA going through the RTA's certification process, which with the application online and their new process, it's getting more streamlined. So we're really glad to see that. So individuals can now register to get up to a $30 transit trip for a $2 fare. So it's a $2 fare with PACE covering the subsidy up to $30. So it's $28 of additional transit value for them to opt in. Requirements, you do have to be within the ADA service region. The pickups and drop-offs do have to be within the ADA service region, but I'm glad to report that a lot of the high target locations in McHenry are within those areas. The county courthouse, the workforce development center, the MCC, our downtown transit centers, metro stations, those are all within the ADA region here in McHenry County. And this service, as it is operated outside of regular ADA service, it is a private company, private entity. So it would be when those services are available. So when U-Serve or Uber are available, that service could be accessed. That might be within the ADA service timeline, that might be outside of the ADA service timeline. So those are private companies that individuals are opting into using. So it's an additional service. They're not giving up their ADA paratransit services as they use them today. It's just adding an additional option for them to opt into. And I'm glad to see we've had over 9,000 in the first 6 weeks. Revision, I know Scott was able to attend, but our PACE revision team kicked off stakeholder engagement opportunities for our regional stakeholders. So we invited our regional stakeholders to come out in April to have a kickoff overview with our contractors to kind of go over what our process is going to be and initiate kind of an initial discussion of what type of future designs are we going to be working towards. The team will be continuing to do further outreach and public engagements over the summer. So we'll have some new opportunities come summer for general input from the ridership, from the general public. But in the meantime, there is still the opportunity for every single person in this room and every single person in this region to provide feedback. So you can take a look at pacebus.com/revision, and that's REVISION. Or you can go to pacebus.com and just search revision. And you'll go to the page. It's a really nice landing page. There's a bar graph that shows kind of how we're moving through this process. And then at the very bottom, there's an opportunity for people to submit an email. So if you have a bus route in your community, a bus route on your street, if you know there's an area you want to take a bus to and it doesn't go there today, please submit that public comment via the email portal. You can also sign up for text alerts and email alerts on the webpage. And you should be able to select revision as that project that you want to get those updates on. So when the website is updated, you might get an update. You can also look for future meetings to be posted, and then we'll have our local level engagement forums. Those will also be listed, so those will be the general public opportunities for local engagement in the future. Those will be later this summer, and that information will be available on the website once it's approved. I mentioned at the last meeting that we got a grant from Congressman Bill Foster's office for $1 million to bring more electric vehicles into our fleet, and that would be 5 electric paratransit vehicles for here in McHenry County. So we're going to be working through that process. The federal process can be, it's a process. So when we get access to those funds and the ability to order those, I will keep everybody up to date, but we look forward to bringing those electric vehicles up here to McHenry County. I mentioned RAP. And then the last thing, actually something that Sarah mentioned, and I'm really glad that you brought it up. PACE's Trip Check application is officially launched, so we are continuing our investment in technology. PACE Trip Check, if you've never used it before, is actually something that can be utilized by MC Ride riders as well as our ADA paratransit users. This is now an app version of our online portal where you could previously look at your pre-booked trips, look at your past trips, provide feedback, and then have the ability to look into the future as to what you've pre-scheduled on our system. Long term, potentially, this might be an opportunity for online booking, but we're not there yet. But I'm glad to report at least it is now in an app form, so individuals can load to see on their phones while they're out at the doctor's office or while they're in the community, what time is my bus coming again? Maybe I forgot to write it down. They can load into their app. It's really easy for them to see when their trips and their pickups will be at the next opportunity. I did walk someone through this actually at MCC, the downloading and creating a process, creating an account. It's a couple steps of a process, but it's accessible to our riders. So individuals can quickly download the app and then use that app to create a new account, and then they'll get an email or a text notification. They might even get a phone call to give them the proper information that they need to log into that account. So you can see it's just PACE Trip Check is the name of the app, and it's available in Apple App Stores as well as your Google Play Store. With that, I'm open to any questions.
I
Yes.
have a question about the trip check. Is this the app that you mentioned? Maybe I'm confusing with something else, where you can plan a trip?
This is a different app. Yeah, I know. We're hoping to get them all to talk to each other, and that's the goal with bringing them together. So PACE Trip Check is a new app for individuals to download, and specifically for paratransit and our coordinated services like the MC Ride service. The one I mentioned previously is for the planning is what I presented everybody today, the Transit app. And I haven't heard that Transit app yet interacts with this one, but I know our ultimate goal is that everything flows through Transit app. You can use Transit app to find our on-demands, our fixed route buses. It'll give you step-by-step for how to access the buses. So Transit app if you're taking regular fixed routes or our on-demands, and a Trip Check for those who are looking for MC Ride and ADA paratransit services. Thank you. Great question. Yes?
I have 2 questions about the RAP program.
Yes.
I wonder if you're keeping any data on, first of all, how much the rider is paying. I know that you're required to pay $1 at least, right?
It's a $2 fare.
$2.
$2 fare.
But it could be more if the trip costs.
Yes, it can.
So it would be useful to know how much the average driver is actually spending on each trip. Because if they're spending $50 to get to where they want to go, then that's not practical for most people, especially if it's a round trip. Secondly, I wonder if it's possible to know who the demographic that are using it. For instance, is it people who are already going to use Uber or whatever rideshare program, so they're just looking to get a discount for some reason, or is it actually people who need to get to work at home or, you know, to church or whatever they're going to, and they have no other means to get there, or would the better be served with the bus program? So, those are two pieces of data I wonder if they.
So I will say, I don't have the data today, but I will check with our team to see if we are keeping, my assumption is that we are keeping track of the overall trip costs on our riders, because the system has to generate, when they load it up, it tells them how much the subsidy will get them, and it'll tell them if they're going beyond what the subsidy is, so they know how much that cost is on themselves before they book the trip. So if it's gonna be a $40 trip, they'll know that they'll have to pay $12, $2 fare, and then $10 beyond the 30.
Now, if, because what I'm trying to figure out is this a replacement for bus service? Or is
No.
this something in addition to bus service?
Yes.
Are
This
we-
is an additional
are we
option.
moving resources towards this that might be more effective in dollars per person?
That's fair. So this program grew out of our ultimate need to have more service on the road. We have seen our paratransit services have reached 2019 levels and are now beyond 2019 levels. And we are seeing a 30% reduction in our drivers for our ADA paratransit services. So our ADA paratransit services are in a situation where we have less drivers and the same, if not more, current need in the community. So we decided to seek additional options to give those ADA riders another additional option. So there could be situations where maybe they were calling to try to get a trip and the time wasn't working for them and they had to choose a different route. Now, RAP might be able to fill that gap, and it's going to be filling the gap of our driver shortage that we are experiencing. So this is a complete option. It's not removing anyone's ability to take an ADA paratransit services. They have the opportunity to choose which company they opt into too. So if they have a disability that requires a lift or an ADA accessible vehicle, they have the opportunity to pick between either Uber or Serve to make that decision themselves as to which they feel would give them that type of need.
I'm sorry, to ask one more question, because you brought up another question. What is the pay rate for drivers?
For which service?
ADA?
For our ADA paratransit, so those are controlled by contract that we have with individual contractors throughout the region. So it's a varying number of what each one is paid. So I do not know off the top. But I know our contractors have been working to increase that. Increase the level of drivers, but I will just say it's a nationwide concern. So PACE ourselves has we need more drivers in all of our route areas and all of our divisions. All of our contractors are currently hiring. Some have offered, sign-on bonuses. Some have. PACE itself has taken on the role of providing CDL training for partnering with colleges to help get people over that barrier. So getting a CDL license for some is a barrier. There's a cost to it. There's downtime. You have to go back to school while you're not working. So we have taken on covering that financial burden and then hiring people immediately once they get out of our CDL sponsored classes with CLC or with other community colleges. So we're doing what we can, and I know our contractors have tried to incentivize new drivers with sign-on bonuses and potentially seeing pay increases since the pandemic era.
Let's not go on.
Can I ask you something?
Sarah.
Yeah.
Okay, number one, paratransit's been a big issue since the existence, right? And with ADA and all those things. So I'm so encouraged by this because I've been in talks and about paratransit and what you do about paratransit and how expensive it is to run these buses, with one person in it. So kudos, I'm very encouraged by this project. The other thing I wanted to add or inform is it's called APIs. APIs about getting apps to connect. And I know in other mobile applications, web applications, you can put out an RFP to have an API, or a study done to like, what would it take to get these, what technology we use, how do we, get these apps to talk. So it's kind of a layer of connectivity between the passing data and the secure way and that type of thing. So I just wanted to, bring that up. And with the bus drivers and those, are they unionized? I know you say it's
Certain ones are.
contracts.
Certain ones potentially are unionized.
Which
so-
is even more negotiation and more of a challenge, right, in managing those contracts. But I'm encouraged that you have that CDL permit. Also,
Thank you.
Scott?
And point of clarification, the RAP program, does it provide trips on RAP during the hours of operation that our fixed route buses are not operating? So out here, they stop running from like 10 to 3, right? So if you try to get a RAP ride between 10 and 3, you're out of luck. Even if your
That's
origin.
correct.
That is,
You can.
but you can get it.
You can, it is based on the private company. So if there's an
Yeah.
Uber service running when our buses aren't running, and you're within the ADA region, you could order a RAP ride.
Got it.
If you're in the ADA region.
Awesome, that's great.
The ADA service would not provide an ADA trip while the bus is running.
So it's not a choice at that point, it's during those hours where the fixed route's not running, RAP is your only option, from an ADA standpoint.
Right, okay. Or NC Ride.
Or MC Brothers, yeah. Okay.
So does it have any limitations on hours?
Based on the private company.
I
So
mean, if they're
based on-
running 24/7, you could.
There's an Uber on the road, we potentially, they're, so the way Uber works obviously is drivers have to approve the trip that they're taking, so there is that condition, but our subsidy does not have a time.
And then, just to remind me, I guess the ADA route, it's off the major highways through McHenry County?
So ADA is within, the ADA region is within 3/4 of a mile of a fixed route bus.
Okay,
So our
that's-
fixed route buses are on US 14 between Crystal Lake and Harvard, 3/4 of a mile, north and south, east and west of those routes.
Okay.
3/4 of a mile of how we move from Woodstock over to McHenry. So there's a swath of ADA.
That's why
routes there in the
it's
center.
120, right?
Yep. And then we go down 31,
And 14.
past Pioneer Center through downtown McHenry. So there's a good portion of ADA region within the area. It's 3/4 of a mile, both directions as the GoPro flies from the route.
Thank you.
I have one more question. In regards to the ADA client, do they accommodate people in wheelchairs and the mobility aids? I mean, I've heard this too, that they get turned down by Uber, they can't find one because they're in a wheelchair and the vehicle won't accommodate them.
So that's up to the Uber itself. So when they request the ride, they may have the ability to select, like if they're looking for a wheelchair accessible vehicle, but it's up to Uber whether or not there's one available on the road. So there is a chance that there might not be one. And that's one of the reasons we're partnering with UServe as well. UServe is a company that we also have currently operating some of our ADA paratransit and some of our coordinated services in other areas because they committed to having ADA accessible vehicles. So the rider has the opportunity to choose which program, and there's information on PACE's website, pacebus.com/RAP, where they can see side by side, they compare the Uber system versus the UServe system, so they can review as to what would be best for them.
Okay, thank you. And then, you got a lot of Metro information. Is there someone presenting it, or is there?
No, Metro's not here today, but they included a couple of documents, their 2024 construction program, and their, a memo on their safety blitzes, which means that they'll have employees at certain stops handing out educational information about safety. But those are included in the packet.
Okay, so that's Old business, new business, MC Ride Connect.
So we talked about this program a bit our last meeting. Just as a refresher, MC Ride Connect is a new transit program where certain eligible McHenry County residents can use Uber to book a trip, very similar to Pace's Wrap. That's kind of where it's housed under. But the county had the opportunity to kind of create our own program with our own parameters, and that's what staff has been developing for the past few months. Right now, we are waiting on an IGA from PACE just to finalize our program parameters. From there, we'll be able to take it to TC and the board and vote on that. Right now, we're working on promotional material. We are starting our postcard campaign, which we've designed, and we are sending that out to targeted MC Ride riders. We took a look at, which of these riders would qualify, and we'll be sending them out in the next few weeks. Currently, we have a tentative start date in June, but that just depends on when we hear from PACE and when we can move forward from that. Other than that, we are putting together informational graphics. We can share that all with you. I've included this postcard in your packet just so you can take a look at it. But we haven't distributed anything yet. We don't have anything in print. I think you all are the first to actually take a look outside of staff of what that looks like and our logo and the design of that. Likely in the next time we meet, this program will already be running, but before then we'll definitely keep in touch and be able to distribute some information so that you all can reach your communities. And a side note, which I didn't mention earlier, is we've updated our MC Ride brochures. So I have that at the table, and then I have some if you'd like to take some with you, but just on a separate note. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
For you guys, and you too, about, and this was one of the challenges with the Venture app, was ADA testing and finding ADA testers of the app and learning that there are certain requirements. And then also that there's a very large blind and deaf population that want to travel, they want to get out. And so I'm just asking, or maybe just informing that may be a consideration, or tracking, things that your users, your clients experience, because that's something you don't get in the app world and you don't necessarily get in the Uber world, is the ADA requirements that are necessary for public apps.
Yeah, I don't know if this kind of is responding to what you're saying, but for this program, one of the eligibility requirements is that riders are registered with RTA, and they're free or reduced programs. RTA has its own requirements, so when people are enrolling in this program, they do have to have a card first. I know RTA collects certain information about their disabilities, their status, which we're not asking to disclose with us, just that they have that card. But yeah, and I think especially working with a private company, there's barriers in collecting private information, but yeah, it's definitely in mind. I don't know if that responds to what you're asking.
Well, no, I get it. I mean, just like the PACE Wrap program, this is a choice. No one's forcing people to use this. Some people are going to find this isn't for them, and they can continue using MC Ride just like they've always used MC Ride. But for those people that see this and they can use the Uber app and they've got no issue getting an Uber to come to their house, then this is just one more option for them. It's just a choice, and same thing with the Wrap program. I will just put a point of sort of clarification on how does this differ from the Wrap program. So again, we heard Ed say that in order to use the Wrap program, you need to first be ADA paratransit certified. And then secondly, your origin and your destination need to be within 3/4 of a mile of a fixed route. And Terry was so eloquently talking about how little fixed routes we have in McHenry County, right? So if you're looking at a Venn diagram of who's ADA paratransit certified, who has an origin and a destination within 3/4 of a mile, it gets so small, it's almost non-existent. People that can use in McHenry County the RAP program. So that's why McHenry County decided we're going to model our own program off of the RAP program and make it open to pretty much anybody with a disability or a senior citizen. Doesn't matter who you are, where you're going, we'll pay for your Uber trip, up to $16 a trip. And so again, it's sort of, it looks like a lot like RAP, but it's much more all-encompassing than the PACE RAP program. And like I said before, MC Ride's not going anywhere. It'll continue to be here as sort of the safety net for people that choose not to use this. And so it's just one more option. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, it really, we're at the mercy of Uber and UServe in terms of the app technology, what people with disabilities can and can't use on that technology. But that's sort of that's how we're able to keep costs down too, right? So we're trying to always make sure we're keeping costs down and putting service out, you know, with the scarce money that we have. So does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. It's an accepted risk.
It is, yes.
And I'll just say one additional thing, I just double checked it. If you, for the Uber system, you can't access it without a smartphone and without the app. So if you have a phone that does accept text messages, you can't call, and then there will be like a text confirmation that you will receive to book your trip. So it's available, for the RAP program that's available.
It'll
My
be
assumption
available,
is that
yes.
it will be also available for the MC Connect.
Same thing on our program. Also, wheelchair accessible vehicles, we've been told will be available, not 24 hours a day, but they'll be available during certain hours in certain locations. But I'll caution people, if you live in Harvard, there's probably not going to be any Uber drivers in Harvard. So this program really is serving people in the populated parts of the county, because that's where the Uber drivers are. And we just need to all be understanding that this is not going to, uniformly serve all of McHenry County. That's never, we're not promising that, and Uber can't deliver that, because again, they're at the mercy of who's able to drive for these TNCs. So I think that's something from an expectation setting standpoint. If you live in McHenry or in Crystal Lake, you're going to have really good service using this. But in Hebron, Harvard, or Marengo, you're probably not going to have any service under this ride-sharing program.
Is it just Uber or Uber?
It'll be Uber and UServe, the same thing as the rest.
But just Uber or other rideshare companies?
What's that?
Other rideshare companies like Lyft or?
So Pace is talking with Lyft. They've not signed on yet. It's our hope that we're going to start with Uber and UServe and then maybe add Lyft later.
Just
down the
know
line.
there's a lot more Lyft drivers in Crystal Lake.
There are, yes.
Is Kaizen associated with any of these?
No, not to my
Not
knowledge.
to my knowledge. No. And we're working with the other rideshare companies to try to get them to join.
And one thing I didn't say that I think is important, these programs, they're about providing more service because of the driver shortage, but they're also to save money. And these programs, you might say, well, $30 subsidy is a lot of money. It is, but the average ADA ride is $50. So actually, it's a bargain for Pace to give a $30 Uber trip, just like it's a bargain for us to give a $16 Uber trip to somebody, because our average MC ride trip is $30 a trip. So for every person that decides to take this instead of MC Ride, we're actually saving the taxpayers $14 a trip. And that's $14 we can spend on other things here at transportation. So it's sort of a win-win. People are going to find it's more convenient and it's cheaper. It's not for everybody, but for those that do use it, it's going to be great.
Can I ask a question? So for example, in the REC program, people can also be enrolled in TAP, which is the Chicago
Correct.
program. So is that going to apply to the
Yes.
MC Ride Connect?
It will, yes.
It can only be one or the
It can
other?
only be one or the other, yeah, so, but we sort of get around, I mean, that's not an issue because we're limiting this to just county residents. So you have to be a resident of McHenry County. I don't know if any residents are registered with TAP, I doubt there's any at all. But we may find a couple instances where there's some overlap there.
And here's another kind of really specific question, but there I see it's listed either a reduced fare or ride free card. What if they have a paratransit card but they don't want to enroll in RAP? They rather just use MC Ride Connect?
That's a good question.
That one is technically a reduced fare card
yeah.
too. So
I think yeah, we would definitely accept that as an eligible fare type. It's not something we've talked about because we just have assumed that because Pace's program is more generous than ours. But I think we'd be open to taking those rides if they chose to use our program instead of the.
Yeah. On RAP and MC Connect in Chicago, since we're using rideshare programs and rideshare drivers, I assume, I'm wondering about liability issues. Because as I understand it, a lot of these, maybe I'm mistaken, a lot of these rideshare companies don't accept much of the liability for what happens in a private person's car. And so what if somebody gets injured? What if somebody experiences something more traumatic? Is the, in a bus, the public company would be responsible, but I'm guessing that this is also passing the government too. Am I wrong?
I suppose you could speak on liability issue on that.
I can't. I wish I could. I can't speak to it. You know, my assumption is that it falls on the private company that you're opting into, and when you take on that option, you're accepting part of that. But yeah, it would probably be spelled out in some of the documents that you might sign when you log in.
And from the county's perspective, we're doubly insulated because PACE is the one that has the agreement with these rideshare companies. We have an agreement with PACE. So we're essentially at the end of the line, right there. They would be the first one. If there was a liability associated with PACE, on the hook, not the county.
From a moral standpoint, I think that the public has some responsibility to the people that we're deferring transportation responsibility to somebody else. And while it might be more cost effective to pass the buck, I think the public has some responsibility to make sure that people that are using services subsidized by the public, that they're safe, and I think we can't be certain of this, so I'm a little concerned about us converting to this in the interest of trying to save money. Are we putting people at risk?
It's a valid point, Terry. I would just say, I lost my train of thought. I had something I was going to say. Ed, help me out.
I mean, from our perspective, it's never been, about saving the funds. It's about getting more opportunity and more options for individuals. So it's, as we've said, it's not for everybody. Not everyone's comfortable taking a rideshare company trip. So in those situations, it's one of the reasons you're not opting out of the other services that
And it's
are
not
available.
for disabled people either, right?
ADA is for individuals with disabilities that fall under the ADA.
This rideshare one too, because not everybody doing rideshare has a disabled.
A wheelchair accessible.
Yeah.
Right.
But there are some on the road.
There are some on the road,
Yeah.
and they make commitments that they'll have more on the road.
And Terry, I forgot, remember what I was going to say. So if the county had to certify every single Uber driver that drove for this MC Ride Connect program, verify that their vehicle is safe, the driver passes, if we had to do that level of work, we wouldn't be doing this program because of the level.
We're making a choice between public transportation and private. That's my point.
Yeah, and I can see.
There may not be an answer that you can give me, but I'm just making that's the point.
Again, MC Ride's not going away. We expect to give the same amount of MC Ride trips after this program is implemented
As I pointed out earlier, MC Ride is not very in this county, so.
I appreciate that.
Because I've had to dig deep into paratransit through my career. I've had to do that with PACE. And this has been such a challenge, and this is an answer. Back in 2015, 2016, 2017, they were talking about this, about using Uber, doing business with Uber. They were looking at doing rideshare and integrating that into the Venture app. And it was right when Uber was hitting Chicago. And what I learned from that was that we have spent decades as a country, our Department of Transportation, decades on safety and being safe, and have spent a lot of time and money and all that. But for some reason, with paratransit, it's just not meeting needs of clients. And I'm gonna say, this is an accepted risk, that you guys are doing. But it's been talked about for years, since Uber came out, of doing it this way, that they need something, Pace needs something like that. And it's expensive, right? It's expensive, so, but I hear you too.
And I think it'd be important to just
Liability.
mention, every other transit agency around the country is exploring this exact same model. So PACE is not unique. Every transit agency is doing something similar, to a greater or lesser extent, using these private companies. So it's not like we're doing anything out on a limb that nobody else is doing. I mean, we're sort of following a well-trodden path.
And can I just say, this committee, since, I think I've been on since it was formed, and we act on behalf of the county committee. They give us projects, I guess, to work on, and that the Uber, since day one, we've been tasked with trying to make that work for public transportation. So it's, it's like you said, it's been around, not just everywhere else, but here, for a long time. So. Okay.
Just one more thing, we'll need everybody's help getting the word out, because Jasmine and I are a small team, and this is a big new program, and we haven't done a big new program in 10, 12 years. So anything you all can do to help us get the word out, reach the residents that need to use this or want to use this, would be very much appreciated. We can share, as soon as we have postcards, we can share as much as you want. You can take them and hand them out at your city hall or at MCC.
You email stuff?
Well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We'll put together some materials to send out to you.
I don't send it to people. Ed first, and then Sarah. Ed, did you have something?
No.
Okay.
Well, I just want to make this comment, that my context is dealing with CTA PACE Metra without McDOT. And when McDOT was formed in 2018, I thought that was such a great move for this county, because now you have some governance over dollars here locally. And I've seen more movement in transit in McHenry County, and things being addressed. And, but yeah, the liability thing is probably gonna be a court thing, and, yeah, and the accepted risk, and the rider accepting the risk. But I do wanna ask this question, do you have a path of escalation for your clients? Like, will that be communicated? Like, if you have an issue, if you have a problem, you're assaulted, you dropped off at the wrong spot, your driver is drunk, or has been smoked, it's that type of thing. Things that are known issues with Uber.
I think this is where we need Gary here, right?
Yeah, Gary would actually be the one
I should know the number, but.
all of these.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
At least it's in your ear. It's in your ears, a path of escalation. I think that's the thing. Knowing in the script that you're gonna give McHenry County College students, and actually having someone like Sam Clifford now for student access.
Yeah.
That you actually have a dedicated person to like go and advocate, student advocate for people, and know how to escalate. And that was one of my observations is PACE. There was no knowledge of how do I escalate my issue like what he just had, his issue. And I was talking to someone at PACE, and I think he said I had to file a complaint in Bloomington, like it was a different.
We have a separate agency, we have a separate department, our customer relations team takes all those complaints and things get escalated. So you have two options, when you're on the phone with the paratransit person, you can ask to speak to a supervisor or ask for just a complaint, and then they would transfer you to our customers relations team, and they would take that complaint, and then every single complaint is followed up on by our quality assurance team that manages and oversees the contractor to ensure that they are maintaining the level of service that they are required to do. And we are recording all of those calls, every single interaction that you have with our call takers, with our bus operators, we are recording, and there's video in the buses, that our quality assurance team has the power and ability to pull that at any time to review those incidents and situations. And then regarding the grant program, I will mention, you use the Uber or you serve program to submit those complaints and So I looked, Uber has a safety toolkit that you can submit, concerns or questions if there's a safety incident, if there's a car crash, if there's something that happens while you're in the vehicle, you would report it through them. And as an additional, I would always recommend you call Pace Customer Relations and report it to us as too, so we're connected as well. But the Uber system or the Uber service system will have their own, escalation process within their customer relations.
Thank you. The next new business item is RTA Citizens Advisory Board update, and that'll be Terry.
Sure. And this will be a standing, if Terry's okay with this, we'll have this be a standing agenda item for every PTAC, because typically, I think RTA CAB meets quarterly, or is it?
Quarterly.
Okay, so maybe if we happen to
Last one's
meet,
April, so.
yeah, we'll get regular updates going forward.
Try to keep it short because I started a little bit on this before. The main thing that they talked about at the last CAP meeting was the deficit of $735 million, I think it is, to get back to the level of service of pre-pandemic. The main reason that there's a deficit, as I understand it, is because of drop off in ridership, which is slowly going up, but it's not back to where it was. And they also want to actually double that amount, or a little bit more than double that amount, in order to make some progress in making improvements, like converting to non-fossil fuel vehicles, things like that. This gets back to the issue I mentioned, we're not spending all the money we have from the RTA tax on public transportation. A lot of it's going towards roads and bridges, which you need to run a bus on, but the tax is actually for public transportation, and it's not being used for public transportation. I'm assuming that this is a similar situation in at least the Collar counties. I don't know if it's Cook County also or Chicago, but it seems to me there's money to devote here. And then we also have this problem, as I've been alluding to, for people who want to use the bus, I'm guessing most of the people in this room don't actually use it regularly. I'm not using it right now because I have a car, but I have used it quite extensively, most recently in 2022. And, you're not able to do what you need to do. You can't rely on it to get to jobs. There's very limited route bus service, and it doesn't go to places where there are factories for the most part. So it's not practical, and for RTA to come and say, well, we want to raise taxes to fund RTA. If you ask people in McHenry County who need the service, they're going to say, we're not getting service already. Why should we pay more for something that's not usable? And like my experience, I related 3 cases just this week where rides couldn't be obtained. If somebody goes through 3 experiences in a row trying to get a ride, sooner or later they're going to give up on trying. And I think that's a lot of the experience, and that may be a reason why there's not a lot of ridership in our county. For the route buses, if you're relying just on route buses, you might have to wait 5 or 7 hours for a ride home. And if you're going just to go to grocery store or the doctor's appointment, to wait around that long, especially if you can't wait inside where you're going, that's not practical. And so I think improving route bus service would be the best way, or at least service in general, would be the best way to justify to people that this service is needed and that it's worth paying for. And I wholly believe that route bus service is the most practical, useful way. I've mentioned that before, so I won't deliberate it further, but I do want to mention that there were two issues also brought up. I brought up the fact that, I don't know if it was at this meeting or the transportation meeting, it was mentioned that there's only 2 kiosks for Ventra cards in the county at the metro stations. I mentioned this with, at the cab meeting. The metro guys said, well, we're rolling it in over 2 years for all the metro stations in the county. And it doesn't make sense, they shut down all the ticket agents before that. They could have rolled that out or whatever. Another issue, thing they brought up is there's a domestic abuser ride program that they have now. They're providing transportation for people who have suffered domestic abuse. They provide, I don't know if it's bus passes or whatever, means of getting around to people through agencies in the Chicagoland area that are domestic, for people who suffer domestic abuse. And I think that's a good program. And I did submit several points that I wanted them to focus on. One was like, for instance, I wanted them going to the DuSable Museum in Chicago, and I wanted to get on the L. And I didn't know which side of the track to go on because it just says a street name at the end of the line, and I don't know if that's north or south. So I said, why don't you put north or south on one of some of these? And another issue I brought up was that metric stations, most of them are closed. So I had an experience some years back where I like to go to the movies when the Academy Awards come out. So I went to the Barrington South Multiplex, took a cab to the train station afterwards, and could take a bus down there to there, but I took a cab to the train station, and at that time, there were no markers on the platforms. They had 3 platforms there. And I heard a broadcast, outbound train, track number 3. And how did I know which track number 3 was? Fortunately, now several of the stations, including that one, have numbers for which track it is. But at that time they didn't. I know a lot of the stations don't have those things, so I suggested they do that. I also had an experience where the lost and found, I lost my phone at the Ogilvy station, and I learned that the number for lost and found on the website says it's for the trains, not for the building. So you have to, they transfer me to someone else for some other number for the building, but the number didn't work, so I mentioned that to them, so hopefully they'll fix that. But I think those are the main things. And does anybody have a question?
Not a question, but can I talk funding? Since Gary brought that up, I love talking funding, but I'm going to do this all from my memory, so I'm going to use very round numbers. Okay. So let's go back in time. Up to 2008, there was an RTA sales tax that was put in back when the RTA was formed, but it was a quarter of 1%, so it was 0.25% on everything, every good sold in McHenry County. Our residents paid 0.25%. And that 0.25% went to fund primarily Metra and PACE. And there was some small amount that went to fund the RTA as an agency, a couple other things, but primarily that 0.25 went to Metra and PACE. And back in 2008, we're talking annually, that 0.25% would generate roughly $9 million a year, roughly, more or less.
In McHenry County.
From our residents, right? That's sales tax generated from McHenry County residents, people purchasing goods here in McHenry County. In 2008, the state legislature passed some legislation that increased the RTA sales tax in the Collier counties. So everything outside of Cook County. What they did was there was a compromise reached where the chairman of DuPage County wanted some funding for their public safety building. So basically their sheriff's office, right? The sheriff's office needed a new building. They saw this as an opportunity to get that building funded. And so what they did was, as part of this increase to the RTA sales tax, they added a caveat that said that, so essentially they raised the RTA sales tax from 0.25% in the collars to 0.75%, so they tripled it. Okay, so they increased it by 0.5%. But half of that increase, so 0.25%, came back to the collar counties for our use on transportation or public safety. And that was that carve out for DuPage County. They made sure that in the legislation, collar counties can use all of the RTA sales tax for the sheriff if they want. They don't have to, but the only rules by state law are it has to be for transportation or public safety. Right now, even, what is this, 15, 20 years later, DuPage County still is spending 100% of that on public safety. They've not spent one dime on transportation since 2008. So what does this increase mean for us? So in 2008, McHenry County started seeing revenue be collected from this new RTA sales tax. It started out around $9-10 million per year, which all came to DOT. And it's slowly grown over that period of time up to what Terry said today was roughly $14.5 million this year, is what we expect to get in RTA sales tax revenue. Over that period from 2008 to today, we've used, I would guess, 98% of that funds on transportation. There's been a couple cases 5-6 years ago where the county board made a decision to put roughly $5 to $7 million towards the sheriff's office for new jail security system, new radios for the squad cars, that kind of thing. But 98% of all revenue from the RTA sales tax that we collect from McHenry County goes to transportation, and that means that flows through this agency, McHenry County DOT. McHenry County DOT made the decision back in 2010, so a couple of years after we started getting this money, we made the decision that we were going to siphon off a portion of that for bus service upgrades. So basically spending that money on transit. Back in 2010, 2011, that number was in the $500,000 per year range, $600,000 per year. And it actually grew over that time from 2010 to trying to think, the peak was probably in 2015. We spent well over $2 million per year in 2015. Then it sort of ebbed and flowed from 2015 to today. We're back up to 2-something million per year spent on public transit out of the 14.5 million that we get. So, but it's important to know, our residents are paying, anytime you buy something in the store, if you add up all the RTA sales tax that's paid, it's about $45 million per year that's being taxed for the RTA sales tax. 45 million. We get 14.5 million of that back here at DOT, and we spend 2 million something on transit. So essentially what that means is that there's roughly 33 million out of the 45 that's being spent on public transit. Okay? And I know there's a lot of numbers thrown your way, but essentially what I'm saying is, yeah, Terry's right. Here at DOT every year we spend 12 million or so on non-transit related expenditures. Roads, bridges, bike paths, sidewalks, that type of thing. They spend 2 million. This year it's going to be actually 2.4 million on bus service, which includes the MC Ride Connect program. We're putting 420,000 towards that program this year, as well as 2 million for our MC Ride program. And then periodically we also put money towards Metro. So we committed $11 million from RTA sales tax to Metro for the Woodstock Rail Yard project that's just getting kicked off right now. And those type of things periodically do come up. So that's $11 million from the RTA sales tax we're putting towards transit over the next 3 to 4 years. You're going to start to see those expenditures come out. But it's still, Terry is right, we spend 80+% of our RTA sales tax on non-transit expenditures. So I just wanted to clarify that. It does on non-public transit uses, right? It's spent on transportation, but not transit, public transit use.
So the county gets 45 million.
The county gets 14.5, or roughly, let's say 15.
Okay.
County gets 15.
Okay.
The service boards, PACE, Metro, CTA, RTA, they get the 30. And there's a formula that they use to split that out. PACE gets quite a bit of that, Metro gets quite a bit of that. But the 30 million, we don't even see. That's the state of Illinois collects it. They give it right to the RTA. RTA divvies it out to the service boards. We only see the 15 million per year that comes directly to us here at DOT.
And you said it has to be spent on transportation or public safety?
Correct. That's how the state law is used. And I will point out, and I've told this to Terry, we spend more, not as a percentage, but just more total than any other Collier County on public transit. So our $2.4 million this year far and away exceeds what DuPage County, with a population of about 1 million, they spend far less than that on transit than we do. In fact, DuPage County doesn't spend anything on transit. All it's on public safety.
But then the service boards get more of a chunk, so that's where they don't have to, right? Understand that?
They get more, right, so because there's more goods purchased in DuPage,
Yeah,
they get 3 times as much. The service boards generate 3 times as much revenue from DuPage County directly than they do from us. So they theoretically should have 3 times the service in DuPage County, because they're 3 times as big as we are. But the county portion, again, the 15 million that I'm talking about, we spend more of that than any other Collier County in the region. Lake, Kane, DuPage, Will, and we're the smallest county in the region by far. So it just goes to show the problem. I do agree with Terry, we probably could be spending more on public transit, but then what does that say about our peers who spend next to nothing on public transit? So I just wanted to make sure everybody has the same information, so we're all speaking from the same playbook, because this does get very confusing very quickly. And sorry for the round numbers and a lot of the numbers don't.
No, it's very helpful.
Any questions about that?
Out of the 30 million going to base, et cetera, is there any report that comes back on how that's spent?
Not on how it's spent. There's a report you can find actually online through the RTAMS website, RTAMS. If you look up rtams.org, I think it is, you can see actually how much revenue is generated from each county and how that's distributed to the service boards. So you can see that portion, but you cannot, there is no equivalent on the expenditure side. You can't pull up something online to say, well, PACE spent X dollars in McHenry County this year. We've tried to get that information year after year, and we are not successful in getting it from Metro or PACE or anybody else.
so there's a body that's taking our tax dollars, but we can't see how it's spent.
Well, you get the aggregate, right?
We,
You get our budget, so we
Yeah.
present our budget.
Yeah.
I'm not attacking you, Ed, you know.
Yeah, no,
I'm just- okay.
Ed's got it.
We present our, the law, the RTA law does require us to come present our budget to the county elected officials. PACE does so to this board, we do so to the county board as a whole. Some counties require us under their transportation committee, but we do present on that board to the boards, and we provide budget books, PDFs, full documentation of where those funds are going in those line items and those organizations.
I don't want to get too off the rails, but how is it decided that they get the 30 million? What's the percent, how do you make that?
That's written by state law. So the percentage that
That's
goes
that
to each agency.
5.5%
Oh,
increase,
that's
right?
The breakdown on who gets what service board wise, that's all that was decided 30 years ago via state law, and then in 2008 that was updated, the formula. And actually, I have that information. If that's of interest, I can pass that out to show what percentages each get. And it's important to know, their CTA gets a percentage of our revenue too. So that's an interesting situation. But PACE ADA, there's quite a bit of our money that goes to PACE ADA, even though I mentioned earlier that there's very little, if any, PACE ADA provided here in McHenry County. Our tax dollars are going to subsidize that program, as well as CTA, as well as a couple other things that we don't really see any return on. I mean, we know there's a return on the PACE services, the fixed routes, the MC Ride program.
And Metro?
Metro as well. We know they're putting money back into this county via those programs. But there's a lot of stuff where it's more of a, Terry mentioned, he used CTA over the weekend. He probably used to get to Wrigley this weekend. So our residents are using CTA indirectly, right? But not frequently enough, I think, to justify the amount of money that our residents are subsidizing CTA. But that's more of a personal opinion of mine. It's
And
not
then-
fact, right?
the RTA portion, was that just staffing to
yeah.
run RTA?
Right, so
They don't have
Bianca-
buses or anything, right?
Right, no, so RTA has staff members, right, so they
Yeah.
need to need to have a budget to pay for those staff members. So the RTA portion is essentially to keep the agency
Coordinated.
operating, right? So it's a very small percentage. I think RTA's percentage is, it's on the single digit side of things.
When you say service boards, is that RTA's pays?
When I say service boards, what I mean is Metro, PACE, and CTA. Yeah.
Under, like RTAs.
Underneath the umbrella RTA agency.
Does Cook County have the 0.75% tax?
They do not. Their percent, they might be at 1.5.
Yeah, theirs is higher.
Yeah.
So County
Ah,
residents pay more.
And their breakdown is different than ours. So when their residents pay whatever the sales tax is in Cook, it is higher than 0.75. They're paying more in store than we are. But the vast majority of what they pay for goes to CTA, right? So there's a different breakdown in what service board gets how much money from Cook County purchases.
So that is something that's negotiable or changeable.
Always,
The
yeah.
breakdown.
Anytime the legislature reopens the RTA Act, which the next agenda.
That's all right, here we go.
That formula has always been part of the discussion and the
Maybe that's
negotiations.
something we should think about talking about at some point.
Scott's gonna talk about it.
Excellent.
Are we-
Yeah. So if we're moving on to the next item, MMA, thank you, Terry, should appreciate it. Metropolitan Mobility Act, HB 5823. And Shaylin, jump in if you want to correct. So Shaylin, for those that don't know, she's the head of the Council of Governments here in McHenry County. Way more in tune with what's happening in Springfield than I am. So Shaylin could probably add to this conversation too. So the RTA, or the MMA Act, was just introduced on Monday. And essentially what it does, it really there's a bunch of things, but really what it's doing is it's consolidating the RTA and the service boards, CTA. All four of those agencies are coming together into one, call it a super agency, right? Basically to control all the transit provided in Northeast Illinois. From the Loop out to Harvard, it would all be under one umbrella agency known as the MMA. And as part of this, and part of the reason for this is, we mentioned the fiscal cliff. Terry brought up the fiscal cliff earlier. That's the $730 million budget deficit, annual budget deficit. That budget deficit can really only be closed through the help of the state of Illinois. That level of funding, we need state help as a region to keep our buses and trains running and hopefully to improve service going forward. So as a condition of accessing that state money, we have legislators down in Springfield that want to, I guess, require that this region reform how transit's governed as a condition to giving us the money. So they say, we'll give you money, but you gotta give us something in return. And that something is reform of the governance structure. So their big thing, and CMAP did the park plan, a lot of this kind of directly feeds off the park plan, but the big thing is this consolidation of all the service boards. What that means in practice is currently right now, we've got 4 board of directors, RTA, Metro, CTA, Metro, PACE, they've all got their own board of directors. So today, we've got 47 directors appointed by 21 different elected officials. Under the proposed MMA, that 47 goes down to 18 directors appointed by 8 elected officials. So essentially what the General Assembly wants, I think, is more accountability. So when something goes wrong on transit, they want you as a resident to know exactly who to talk to. Because right now, there's 3 different people in McHenry County that represent your voice on transit. There's the PACE director, the Metro director, and the RTA director. And sometimes people don't know, do I talk to my RTA director? Do I talk to my PACE director? This would say you've got one person, one director representing all of McHenry County that can speak for your voice. And so it's important to know. So that's a big change, right? So we go from 47 down to 18, one single board to make all of these decisions. With this, there's a companion bill, HB 5828, which allocates $1.5 billion per year for Northeast Illinois transit. So they don't know how they're going to pay for that yet, but there is a companion bill that says if you pass this, you can access this $1.5 billion for transit, and hopefully that's an ongoing appropriation. So that's the big thing, right? That's the big takeaway is the reform of the governance structure. There's some big changes in terms of how agency executives, so the CEO of this new super agency would have to really be they'd have to be, so they tie executive compensation to performance based on things like safety and reliability of the transit system. So if the transit system's not safe, the executive can have their pay docked, which is not the case today. It requires that transit board members have relevant experience in public transit. So you can't just be somebody who knows an elected official and they say, you can be our transit rep. You have to have some kind of relevant experience to become a transit board member, a director. And it also requires that agency executives record how much they actually use transit. So to Terry's point, they want to shed a spotlight on whether these CEOs are actually using the services that they oversee. And if they're not, people are going to see that. We talked about the board structure being changed, so how those 18 members are appointed, how this bill envisions it is that, like the RTA today, you're going to keep the city of Chicago appoints 5 directors to the RTA board. The Cook County appoints 5 directors to the RTA board. And the 5 collar counties each appoint 1 director to the RTA. So you have this 5-5-5 split. City, suburban Cook, collar counties. They keep more or less that system in place, but they also add 3 new voting directors that are appointed by the governor. And again, it's because if the state's giving us money, the governor wants to have some accountability to go along with that. Those 18 members choose somebody to be their chair. And the chair, I don't know if he's a voting member or not, but there's sort of a 19th person that runs the meeting on behalf of this super board. There's also 6 non-voting members. And this is a new thing. Again, I didn't realize this was going to be happening, but what this envisions is that the Secretary of Transportation with IDOT is going to be a non-voting member. So you're going to have somebody from the road side of things feeding information to this board. The chair of the Illinois Tollway is going to be a non-voting member. A representative of organized labor is going to be on this board. Representative from the business community in this RTA region is going to be on the board. And then somebody from the disabled community will be selected by the board to be a non-voting member as well. And then also the chair of the MMA Citizens Advisory Board, which is kind of a similar thing to what Terry is on today. The chair of that group will be a non-voting member on this MMA board. So 6 non-voting members. The big change as far as the voting composition is currently under the RTA board today, you need what's called a supermajority. So you can't pass anything in the RTA without having, I think it's 60% of the votes. So 2/3. I think it's 60 or 66. I forget if it's 2/3 or 3 out of 5. But in any case, you need sort of a supermajority to pass anything under the RTA today. This MMA board would just require a simple majority. So it would be 50 plus 1, or in this case, 10 votes you can pass whatever you want, right? So that's a big change. Because, I'll get into this later, but that's one of the issues that the collar counties are pretty concerned about, is that we feel like with the simple majority requirement, our voice on this board might be reduced some, and that's a valid concern, I think. I'm going to skip over that. The big thing, MMA board absorbs all the current service boards, CTA, Metro, and PACE, and takes on their obligations such as bonds and labor agreements, and those agencies become MMA operating divisions. So underneath this MMA agency, you'd have a rail operating division, you'd have a bus operating division, and an ADA operating division. It would be sort of a sub-department of MMA. Let's see what else is important. MMA's got full responsibility to set fare. They are going to be the sole ones to apply for federal grants, issue debt. So MMA is required per the state statute, the state bill, to establish service standards throughout the region and allocate funding based on the criteria set in the service standards. So what that could mean, and again, this is all very nebulous right now, but they could say that our service standard is we're only gonna fund services that have a cost per trip under this level, right? And if you have a very expensive part of the region to serve, we're not gonna put services or resources in that part of the region, right? That theoretically could be how this works. The bill eliminates the fare box recovery ratio, which is now currently in state statute, that the RTA regions required to hit a 50% fare box recovery. That goes away under this new bill. And then it provides that fare increases that do occur are small and gradual over time, not all at once. And then it also requires MMA to establish an income-based fare program. So Metra and Cook County are currently experimenting with this today on Metra, but this would be sort of a larger income-based fare program under MMA. And then there's some additional powers that are sort of very unique and out of the box, but I'll go through these really quickly and then I'm almost done. MMA has the ability to set up automated enforcement of laws against bus lanes, bus stops, and crosswalk blockages. So essentially in the city, we see a lot of times people are blocking the bus stop with their vehicle, which makes transit not work as well. So this allows them to put up cameras to enforce the laws that are already on the books on that respect. It establishes a transit ambassador program, which I know some agencies have already done. It creates a new office at the state called the Equitable Transit-Oriented Development Office, and MMA will partner to fund and finance TOD projects. So essentially what that means, there'd be a fund set up where communities can access funding if they commit to permitting and developing, let's say, high-density residential, commercial, adjacent to transit stations, right? So it's really to encourage people to locate and build densely near fixed route transit stations. It also requires IDOT to establish an Office of Public Transportation Support to retrofit IDOT roads. So a lot of state roads are not transit friendly. When you look at 47, you look at 14, buses are not meant to pull over on those roads to safely let people on and off. This would require IDOT to retrofit those roads to basically make them transit friendly. And then lastly, it sets up what they're calling a city suburban mobility innovation program to spur testing and deployment of public transit technology. So it's a sort of a separate program that's going to really incentivize and push forward more tech on our transit system. So that's what's shown today. I have it on good account that this bill is not going to be voted on this session. We're a year away from any type of change being voted upon, and even then, this bill sets out a 4-year transition process. So if it got approved a year from now, you're talking 5 years before the MMA becomes an agency and becomes the thing that takes over full transit, right? So we're 5 years out essentially from anything happening. But I think this is a starting point, and I think it was meant to spur a conversation about where the region wants to go with public transit. Right? I think it's done that already. It was released on Monday and it's only Thursday, and I think that's all I've worked on in 4 days is trying to understand what's in this bill. So, any questions? I kind of went through that quickly, but it's a lot. It's a big change, obviously.
How does the RTA sales tax spin into this with funding?
So this bill doesn't change the RTA sales tax one bit. So the RTA sales tax, the money that we're currently getting for transportation doesn't change one at all. There's that 1.5 billion I talked about. Mm-hmm. They don't say how they're going to pay for that. Part of the pay for it could be increasing the RTA sales tax to something like 1%. Right now it's 0.75. If they raised it to 1%, I've heard that would generate roughly $400 million per year. So it would get us part of the way there. It wouldn't get us to 1.5 billion. I've also heard people throw out things like toll increases, motor fuel tax increases, you name it. Everything's on the table, I think, but they've not decided how they're going to pay for that $1.5 billion per year. It's not a one-time thing. It's an annual revenue source that would have to be established.
We were talking about where does this funding go, this 30 million to service boards, and we were asking questions about that. And my knowledge is what I've been told is that people saw it was it's been political, to control who gets to control the money, which service board gets to control the contract, who gets to control the money, who gets to see the money, or do I have to wait for a vendor to pay it out or whatever. And what I see, I'm encouraged, is that this is going to provide more transparency and more, like, eliminating a lot of the, where's the money, where did it go? What did we do with it? Where did it go? And I know that's been a systemic issue, especially with how they're funded. Like, I learned there are 5 government-funded revenue streams with like Chicago Transit, you have City of Chicago Transit, you have the State of Illinois, you have the FTA, you have all these arms or regulated, heavily regulated. And then Metro the same, but with PACE, it's just RTA. This is how it's explained to me. It's just like, here, PACE, and then we don't get to see what with that board. And when I had my contract at PACE, I went on site to the corporate headquarters, and I did not interact with one single employee that had ever ridden the bus. And actually made fun of me when I took the bus to the headquarters. And so I am just really encouraged by this proposed legislation, because I do see it will eliminate some systemic issues.
Are they gonna allocate the funding? I mean, if Chicago gets 5 votes and Cook County gets 5 votes, that's 10 votes. So, I mean,
Yeah. And that's theoretically, if there's uniform agreement among the Cook County reps and the Chicago reps, they could pass anything they want to change how service is provided, not just on CTA, but on Metro and PACE as well. And I think, again, that goes to the fear that some of the collar counties have, that the little transit we have out here could be threatened. I think it's too premature to know how this is gonna shake out. I don't think it's as neat to say that Cook County and Chicago are gonna agree on everything. They don't. I think more often than not, the collars and the Cook County reps actually have a lot of agreement, especially when it comes to Metro. I mean, Metro is as relevant to suburban Cook as it is to the collars. So I think it's, again, there's so many unknowns. This is the first start of the conversation. It won't be the last. There'll probably be another bill filed that'll look a little bit different. I know in McHenry County, we've supported, instead of consolidating all the boards together, what we've supported in the past is basically giving more authority to the RTA to make more decisions and to set policy and goals for the region. And if that means stripping some power away from the service boards and giving it to the RTA, that's been sort of our preferred model to follow. But at this point, that's not on the table. This is. So we'll kind of see where this goes.
Can I ask who proposed the bill?
Who proposed the bill?
Yeah. You know, the legislator.
Yeah, Representative Ava Dino Delgado in the House, and then Senator Villabalam is, I haven't received this.
It's coming.
There's a couple of different bills with a couple of different sponsors on there, and that's what I was actually just checking.
Buckner.
Co-sponsors, yeah. Representative Pam Buckner,
And they're out of,
Chicago.
All of them are out of Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's Billabong is more north of Cook, but yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
but not, it's not
Yeah,
downstate.
The Senate bill has not been filed that I know of, so.
Could the information on the bill, a link be shared?
I can share the summary that I put together. Yeah, I'll share that via email. I'll have Jasmine send that.
Where is Chicago on this?
We are opposed to the governance portion of it. Honestly, we wish they would have addressed the funding issue before the governance. But we have a lot of communities that are very concerned that they're going to lose the service that they do have. So, and especially as Scott mentioned, our voice and our representation would be diminished from 3 to 1, and it's a small fish in a big pond when you're trying to get extra Metro service or more PACE service, things like that.
But it's important to know, again, I agree, it'd be better to have the funding figured out first and then address governance later, but that's it's been very clear that they're not willing to give us money without touching the governance. And if we don't touch the governance and we don't get the money, the regional transit system goes away. It falls apart. Trains stop running, buses stop running, and people are really hurt in 2026. 2 years from now, the whole world's going to collapse for transit users if nothing's passed. So I want to make sure that people understand that's the ramifications of doing nothing and not passing anything. It's just not sustainable.
On that note.
I'm optimistic.
Okay.
And we'll find a compromise and we'll all sing Kumbaya at the end of the day.
Right.
I just have a quick, really quick.
Go ahead.
I just want to mention, we have 8 electric vehicle charging stations we were trying to figure out a way to put in, and we just found the rebate that they just launched Conrad just launched it in February, so Doug, I can tell you more about it, because I know you guys are looking at it too, but there's opportunities to get the installation costs covered, so finally we're gonna get finally installed, I'm so excited. So, thank you. But the rebate's available to anybody.
Okay. Anything else? Our next meeting will be August 1st, so have a good summer. And a motion to adjourn? Second, okay. All in favor, I assume? Any opposed? Okay. Have a good summer. Thank you. Okay, you hear that, Yasmin?
Scott, I'll call you.
I don't know.
Kim, you got the installation cost?
Sorry?
You got the installation cost?
Installation costs. Rewiring, electricity, all that stuff.
You know, he wants to know how much.
Fortune. And you're up against it too, so I can send you the information, but you have to pay for it, install it, and then apply it. And then ComEd will give you money back.